Peter Piper picked a pack of pickled peppers. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. Wow, this is good. I'm getting good at microphone placement.
Did you know that the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog doesn't actually prove anything when you're not typing it?
I know, but it's still a good phrase to say to test microphone levels.
It's fine. I just thought it was funny because, you type it because quick brown fox is like all of the letters.
Has every letter.
But It doesn't matter that it has all the letters when you're pronouncing it. You need something that like has all of the syllables and sounds and T's and P's and like some very crunchy phrase or something if you're doing like a sound check to have the equivalent.
Preparation prevents poor planning.
Yeah, that thing. Yeah, perfect preparation prevents... I forget what the thing was.
Poor planning...
predicts preposterous failure. I don't know.
I don't remember. It was a good one, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Welcome to Pride and Accomplishment. My name is Jason.
And I'm Chris. This is episode 50.
I said it last time, but I'm going to say it again. I am honestly surprised we made it to 50.
I think I am, if you asked me from 2019, Chris, if we would get to 50, I would have said probably not.
Yeah, we did this thing a long time ago and we made some goals as like when we hit certain points, we were going to do certain things. The specifics aren't important, but we did have a goal for 50 episodes in there. And I feel like we were almost joking at the time that, oh man, if we hit 50, we're going to do this thing. And back then we were a weekly podcast, which we can talk about was a little bit too much, but so like 50 would have been about a year. And it didn't happen right exactly as we planned with the timeline that we planned, but we did make it.
Yes, we did make it. And here we are in 2021, episode 50.
So we wanted to do, I wanted to do, I hope Chris wants to tag along, but I wanted to do a bit of a look back. And I think it would be fun to talk a little bit about the history that Chris and I kind of went through with this podcast, because it was a little bit of a bumpy road. And, maybe, so something Chris and I have said over and over again, particularly after, we took a break, is that we do this for us. It's wonderful to have listeners. It's wonderful to have like people kind of comment and give feedback and all of that. But in the end, right, we don't have a huge audience. So it has to be for us. It has to be for our ability to have fun and just kind of talk and all of that. So one of the things I did want to do is kind of look back, see like how we kind of had fun with it. And then I definitely want to talk about some of our favorite moments.
Yeah, we've been on a long journey. We started this where we were talking about kind of tech and media and video games all together. And, we would talk about movies and movie trailers that were coming out and some of the tech news that was kind of the week, because we were going weekly, right? We would record on, I want to say the weekend, and then kind of record on Saturday, edit on Sunday, post on Thursday was kind of the schedule that we had. And that was pretty exhausting, I would say, for two people that are working full-time at regular jobs in addition to wanting to do this thing on a very strict schedule.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say it was just the production element that was exhausting. Now that we're doing every other week, which, spoiler alert, I think is the right frequency for Chris and I for this show. I think part of it wasn't so much the record, edit, publish, because that, that's kind of a fun process. It's the every week having to come up with something to talk about, prepare for. I'm not saying coming up with something to talk about is a lot of work, because quite honestly, when P&A kind of goes now, we come together and we're just like, oh, let's just take a look at what's in the Discord channel and talk about it. But we don't spend too much time prepping. It's just that when you're going every week, you burn through ideas just so fast, and it becomes very exhausting. And I would say demotivating to like have to sit there for an hour and just be like, what are we going to talk about? So this new frequency is I like a lot.
Yeah, it gives us more time to kind of gather those thoughts and kind of collect them into something that we'll say, yeah, we'll save it for the pod, right? We'll talk about this on the next episode and go from there. And that's where a lot of kind of our recent topics have come from, is, questions from listeners, or, just conversations that we've had to each other of like, oh yeah, what do you think about this? And then basically the immediate response is, wait, save it for the pod. We got to talk about it on the show. So I think that's been different, is that we've been more proactive about some of that. And by having a every 2-week frequency, we have a much better, a healthier, I guess, relationship with the activity of recording, publishing, and coming up with what to say in this show.
That's a nice way of saying it. I think focusing on video games also has been both a blessing and a curse. And I think it's something that, Chris and I both have kind of some thoughts on. When we started, we just wanted to talk about general things that we were interested in because, I felt we weren't alone in our interests, and we could share some stuff. Like Chris said, we did focus on some news related stuff, and sometimes that's difficult because it's timely and things change. By the time you record, edit, and publish, it's different. So we started to focus a little bit more on video games, a little bit more on our opinions, a little bit more on, things like that, which has been nice in that it gives us a bit more of a very centered thing or area or industry to talk about. But it is also, I will say, very difficult. I always want to talk about other things. I mean, if you notice the post shows or the pre-shows, sometimes, we'll be talking about media or TV shows or other tech. And it's because that's where Chris and I kind of want to naturally lead to. So both a blessing and a curse, I would say.
I think something I've learned is that I do play a lot of video games, but I don't play a lot of variety of video games. And so I don't want to come here and every single week be like, oh, yep, we played some more Rocket League. Rocket League's still fun. We're still playing it, right? That's not an interesting thing to listen to as a listener of a podcast. And so, because especially we're not like providing tips or anything about Rocket League because we're not particularly good at it, although we are Diamond. But I would say that we are more narrow in our games that we play, and that makes it challenging to come up with gaming related content every single episode, to me anyway. And I think we've done a good job so far. My biggest concern is that we might run out because we're not that adventurous.
I would argue that maybe for video game podcasters we're not very adventurous, but for gamers in general we're probably pretty close to the norm.
That's true. And that's why you've seen us start to do some things like, we played those games from Humble Bundle and we did some of that, which we need to do again because that was a lot of fun. But really just kind of forcing ourselves to branch out a little bit. And I think that more of that will come kind of naturally because of the desire to have something different to talk about.
So, Chris, something I want to do is maybe talk about some of our favorite moments or favorite episodes. The things that come to mind for me, just like right off the bat, are every pre and post show. They're just, we try to find the funniest moments of the show or elements of the show that don't quite fit that we had to cut, but that are typically us a little bit more raw, I would say, a little bit like, we always start recording a little early. We always keep recording a little bit afterwards. And we always find these little bits and pieces to put in the pre and post show. And sometimes they are very, very funny. Those are probably some of my favorite elements.
Yes, as an editor, it's very fun to pick those out and then place them at the front and then see what the other person thinks, right? We'll send a note and say, hey, listen to the first 30 seconds of the latest episode, because it's whatever the person who's doing the editing has chosen as almost like a joke to the other. I think of it, at least. And I think that that's always a fun reveal to say like, oh, which piece of our conversation, pre or post show or somewhere in the middle did we pick as the pre-show? And I think I've also tried to say that every show should have a pre-show. I don't know that we've had one that doesn't, except for maybe the first one, because it's a big component, I think, a big fun piece of the show. And to not have one would be sad. Yeah,
I don't know that every single one has had one. I I can't think of one that hasn't. It is also, to me, it's an intro. It's an intro to us. It's an intro to our mood. It's an intro to our voices. It's an intro, to, if maybe your car volume isn't turned up yet, and it's not really something important to listen to. It's not like a specific topic, or maybe 10 seconds long. So I think it's all it all goes to the overall show. And I agree. I think it's an important element of it. One of my favorite pre-shows of the entire series actually was, I think, episode 24. I'm pretty sure it was episode 24 when we were actually in a channel with some other people and we were starting to record. And Chris always records the Discord audio just in case we need to sync it or it's part of the kind of the production process. So we captured the Discord audio, and one of our friends mockingly did the intro for us. Oh, it was so good. And my favorite part about the whole thing is that he did the intro tune, the jingle, perfectly on key.
Yes. Yeah, he sang the little jingle, and then we played the jingle, and they were right on top, and that was without any auto-tune or any help. So good job. That's one of my, whenever I kind of go back and listen, I always go back and listen to that one because it's a lot of fun. It's when P&A jumped the shark. I think that was the phrase he used. Ooh, jump the shark seems a little desperate there. I had to explain to somebody the reference of jump the shark at work this week, and reading it, I was like, oh yeah, this is really an act of desperation to get more viewers, on Happy Days is the original reference. Jump the shark is not a good, positive reference here. To say that we jumped the shark 25 episodes ago is maybe a little bit concerning.
It's all right. It was funny.
A piece of the shows that we've done in the past that I really enjoyed has been the spoiler cast that we did for Avengers Endgame. That was a bonus episode that we put out. I think it's unnumbered. I'm not sure if I remember that correctly. But that was right when Endgame had come out, and we were weekly, right? So we recorded and published that, I don't know, I think a week after the movie came out, so people had some time to watch it. And that was a lot of fun because you kind of get that moment to talk with somebody else about a shared experience that you've both just had for the very first time. And you can kind of say, hey, this is what I thought. This is what you thought. What did we like? What did we not like? And then you kind of get that hot take, in a constructive way. But it was a really fun time to kind of get to talk about that. So maybe we should do more of those in the future.
Yeah, those would be fun. And I think because they're bonus, they're not we could still keep our bi-weekly schedule, but maybe throw in a spoiler cast every now and then. I like how we tie that, that one particularly. I like how we tied it in with the actual show, because we did a non-spoiler review during the show. And then we said, hey, if you've seen it and you want to listen to our spoiler cast, go listen to our spoiler cast that's coming out in a half a week or whatever. And I thought that was really cool. A little behind the scenes, we actually recorded it all at once, of course, but we kind of split it up and we said, okay, we're going to take this chunk and we're going to put it into its own episode, so that anyone kind of wanting to listen to the regular show didn't have to kind of skip or pause or anything like that for the spoilers. But it was really cool how it came out. Have we done other spoiler casts? I feel like we have.
I feel like we did one. I'm not sure that we've done them since, really. It's been a little bit of a challenge, because movies haven't really been a thing for the past year. But hopefully we're on the other side of that. Maybe we should do one for Black Widow in the summer.
Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah, I'd be totally down to do more of those. That'd be fun. Something else I really like about our show, now I'm just kind of tooting our own horn here, but something I really like is the titling. We get the idea of how to title our show from another podcast that we listen, Chris and I listen to, that just takes a quote from the show, and they actually do it where their live listeners suggest certain quotes, and then they get upvoted and downvoted, and the hosts at the end get to pick one. But Chris and I always try to choose something from the show to put as the title, because that's, I don't know, kind of funny. We don't really care about the title. We really just want kind of people to listen every episode. So, the title is kind of important, but it's also not. Much like when we're referencing a show, we're going to reference the episode number. So, I think, Chris, you wrote some down here. I really, really like the "They're Gonna Give You a Bow" title. That one, it was a great quote in the episode. It was a great conversation about you buying a car, and it ended up being a great episode title.
Yeah, one of my favorites was Kinetic Typography, because we had a really great segment about kinetic typography with the Wikipedia definition and everything. It was great. You can go back and listen to that one. That was episode 3.
3? It was episode 3?
Episode 3. Gonna Give You a Bow is episode 23.
Wow. Boy, I don't know. I don't even remember what our equipment setup was back then.
Yeah. That was a very long time ago. March 11th, 2019.
Wow.
That was back when we were still talking about Anthem, and we thought it was going to get good.
It still might get good.
No, they've killed it.
The last thing so Chris and I were kind of just writing stuff down before the show. The last thing that came to mind without even we didn't want to go back and reference anything, just what came to mind without reading through our old episodes. But I always loved our gas station saga, I will call it. There were 4 or 5 episodes in a row that every pre-show, or even some of the episode content itself, was about some adventure at a gas station. And I don't even remember the specifics. I just remember it being very funny that each week we had something to say about a gas station.
Yeah, it was about getting gas and I can't remember all of the specifics of it either, but you were traveling and you saw the weird gas pumps in the West Coast where they had those emission reducing connector things that are weird and all of that. And I think that the ultimate irony to all of that is that between the car buying saga, Gonna Give You a Bow, and the gas station saga, I ended up getting an electric car. So I haven't been to a gas station in 2 years. So I'm sorry to all of the listeners out there who are really hoping for the return of the gas station saga, but I really don't have much to revive on that.
I remember just being so upset about the questions that they ask. That was the one thing I remember where I still have this complaint. Why do you ask me so many questions before I get my gas? I'm sitting there waiting for at least, 2 minutes. Ask me the questions after I start pumping. But that was just one on a series of rants. And so that was fun. I don't even have episode numbers for that because it was seriously over a span of a couple episodes. So for our longtime listeners, if you remember something that we haven't, shoot us a message. Maybe we'll talk about it next week because, there's a lot in there, but this is what Chris and I came up with off the top of our heads. It's a fun, shortish kind of list. So.
Yes, thanks for listening to our last 50 episodes, and here's to 50 more.
So I wanted to do something a little different, special, but still video game related for this episode. I thought it's been Chris and I have been peeking at the idea kind of just a little bit over the last couple of episodes about how we got our video game start. I think Chris learned about me just a few episodes ago that a lot of my early video game history was FPS related, which I think kind of surprised you.
Yep, I didn't know that.
I wrote a question down in our notes that is, how did we get our video game hobby start, and then how did it develop? First video games, consoles, PCs, where did it start? Where did it go? I have a pretty interesting story, I think. Probably not all that uncommon. But I actually don't know Chris's at all. I don't know, first video game. I know you had some consoles. I don't know how you got your PC start, anything like that.
Yeah, so I started off with the NES, the old Nintendo, and the Sega Genesis. Those were I got the Nintendo from a garage sale, and the Genesis I got for Christmas when I was, 6. And that was kind of where I got my start on the cartridge, blow into the cartridge, solid state kind of games with the old CRT television, tune it to channel 3 and do all that stuff, right? Started off with Mario. Super Mario Brothers 3 is still one of my favorite games. And then Sonic the Hedgehog 3 also was a great great game that I had on the Genesis.
Did you buy these for yourself? Like, did you know you wanted them, or did your parents kind of like introduce you to them and say, "Hey, you should here's a video game console, like happy birthday," or whatever?
Well, I did get the Genesis for Christmas, but the NES really came, I think, by kind of happenstance of kind of a, hey, this is something that kids, like to do or whatever. And I don't think I asked for it. There was not a lot of good, in the 90s, before widespread internet, there wasn't a lot of really good ways to find out about games like that. At least for me, like I didn't have the Nintendo Power magazine or anything like that. I did get the Sonic comic books. There used to be, paper comic books for Sonic the Hedgehog. There probably still are. And I have a couple of those at my parents' house that are like the early on, like episode 1 or issue 1 rather, of the Sonic comic books. And sometimes they would talk about Sonic and Knuckles, coming soon to the Sega Genesis. And like, I knew I always wanted Sonic and Knuckles. That was the one like holy grail game that I never got for the Genesis, but I also didn't really buy a lot of new games because, I would have had to like save my money and go to a Best Buy or something and get them. And I didn't do a lot of that, especially for the Genesis. Finally, to kind of jump ahead to the end of the story, my roommate in college had a copy of Sonic and Knuckles. And after we kind of drifted apart a little bit, he mailed me the cartridge to Sonic and Knuckles out of the blue.
No kidding.
Yeah. So I actually do have Sonic and Knuckles now. And that was a weird small world thing. And it took 20 years to get from, I really want this game to, oh, I finally have it. So that was really nice. If you're out there, Chris, the roommate, thank you.
So how did you make the transition from console to PC?
I think that my first gateway into computer games was probably Roller Coaster Tycoon and some real-time strategy games like StarCraft, the original StarCraft 1. And I think I heard about those from some friends at school. And so I was able to use the family computer to play like Roller Coaster Tycoon and StarCraft and Age of Empires 2 and those kinds of things. And this was, of course, back when you could like, games came on CDs and you could like burn CDs and copy them and all that. And it was like brand new technology. It's a whole thing. And then you would take the, a Sharpie and you'd write the little CD key on the CD that you burned. And, hopefully the statute of limitations on that kind of stuff is a little bit over. But that was, I did actually end up eventually buying my own copy of StarCraft, or like, I think I bought it like 3 times. So I guess I'll absolve myself of that one. But those games, they ran on our old computer that basically didn't have a graphics card. And then you would start to hear about other games that required more, horsepower. And so when I was in middle school, I think, I had a deal with my parents where they wanted me to do a bunch of things as kind of like a coming of age teenager thing, of like a first responsibility thing where I had to like do a bunch of like physical and like logistical and things. Like I had to like cook dinner for the family and like run a mile in 8 minutes or something. I don't know. There was a whole set of stuff. And if I did all that stuff in the year that I had turned 13, I believe, they would buy me a computer. And so they did. And that was my first, it was a Dell, off the shelf tower computer. And I ended up eventually retrofitting it with a nicer ATI graphics card at the time, right? AMD hadn't bought ATI yet. So I put a nicer graphics card in it. And then I built my first computer probably 3 or 4 years later when I was in high school.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you built your first one pretty early.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what was, do you remember like the first like big game? Like, was there a first game that you pumped hundreds of hours into? Like like your first, what you would say your first like main PC game was? Did you have one?
I'm trying to think. I would say that the most that I had was probably Team Fortress 2, but that wasn't, I mean, if you're asking me like what is my most played game at that era, it was probably the Team Fortress 2 that came in the orange box, which was a collection that included Half-Life 2 and Portal and Team Fortress 2 and Half-Life 2 Episode 1. And I really enjoyed those games, and I played a lot of TF2. But that was really my first foray into online games at all. I really didn't play, before that, I didn't play a lot of online games. I would play, I'm trying to remember. I still have like most of the CDs from all these old games. I played The Sims a bit, but not a lot. I don't know. I'm not sure. It definitely wasn't shooters. It definitely wasn't.
Well, Team Fortress 2 is a shooter.
Well, I know. But my very first games, though, weren't really shooters until I was in probably high school. I'm trying to think of what I would have been playing when I was in middle school.
Yeah. What, like, was there a game that you like, so you finally earned the PC from your parents? Like, was there a game you were just like, finally I can play whatever?
I cannot remember. I'm sure there was, but I cannot for the life of me remember.
And from there, the rest is history, I assume. Like, it just, you never kind of stopped.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of built on itself from there. I would play, I guess, actually, the first game, now that I think about it, that I probably put a lot of time into was Guild Wars 1. Because,
no kidding. I didn't know you played Guild Wars 1.
Yeah. So Guild Wars 1, I liked it because it was an MMO that didn't have a monthly subscription fee. And that was a big deal to me at the time. And, less so now, but still something I prefer. Although I do have a WoW subscription, as we've talked. But yes, Guild Wars 1, I remember getting it at CompUSA. This is really dating me here.
Wow.
Getting the original Guild Wars, and then the expansions I would get, I think, on clearance. And I think I got a couple of them. And then I played Eye of the North, and I played, I forget what the other one was.
Factions,
yes. That was the one. And
I think there was a third one, but I can't remember it.
There were 3. There were definitely 3, and I had them all. And I played a lot of Guild Wars 1, to the point where when Guild Wars 2 came out, I was very excited for Guild Wars 2 to come out, but I actually thought that I might have had enough playtime and enough experience in Guild Wars 1 to like get something in Guild Wars 2, but I didn't. Oh, I just remembered it. The game that I was really excited to play, that I remember pre-ordering, and it's a whole thing, was Warcraft 3, The Frozen Throne.
Oh!
Like, I had Warcraft 3, and then Frozen Throne was coming out, and I remember I had the pre-order, or maybe I didn't pre-order it, but I got it from Best Buy, and it came with like a figurine, like an action figure of Arthas, Lich King, Prince Arthas guy. And so I had the boxed set of the Frozen Throne, and that was a big deal. I wasn't playing World of Warcraft. I didn't play WoW until I was in college, but it was Warcraft 3, definitely.
Warcraft 3 was a great game.
It was, and I played through the whole campaign, because I had played through the campaign in StarCraft, but like I played through the whole campaign in Warcraft 3, and it had all these cinematics, and it had all this voice dialogue, and it was great. And then I was really disappointed when they remade it like 2 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, so, okay, quick sidebar. The remake is less good from an online standpoint, but if you've never played the campaign before, it's still worth it.
Yes, good point. You should still play that campaign, because the art of decent real-time strategy game campaigns is kind of over. So that was a golden age.
Right. Yeah, StarCraft 2 and Warcraft 3, and that was the golden age of RTS storytelling. And then it really hasn't happened since.
Yep. So I would say that's probably where that all started. And then, yeah, Team Fortress 2, and then kind of the rest is history. But I didn't play Guild Wars with people, though. I played it myself. Like, I was pretty afraid of online gaming until kind of late high school, early college. I didn't want to kind of engage with people online when I was younger.
Well, that's still a thing for a lot of people, right? Like, even late into their gaming kind of careers, they don't want to play with other people. Guild Wars was a great game for that, though. Like, there was a community, and the town. And then Guild Wars had this really nice system where you could, you had companions that essentially filled the slots. So you could play it solo very effectively.
Yes. And I did do that quite a bit. And a couple times had some, nice people that would group up with me for a session, but I didn't really have a guild. I didn't really have a group. I didn't, play with people for that.
Now that's so interesting to me, because it is almost exactly opposite of my experience.
Yeah, you were Jason plays games with other people.
Yes, but okay, so my first couple of years were very similar. My first gaming experience, I think, was the Game Boy, that quickly followed by the Game Boy Color, because I think it was pretty much already out by the time I started playing a Game Boy. First game that I can remember are like the Galaga on Game Boy and the Galaga and the other like arcade games that they had turned into Game Boy games. That's what I remember as like my first video game experience. And then that quickly turned into like Pokemon Yellow and you know, the Game Boy Color and all that. I played Game Boy for a long time. I had a lot of fun with Game Boy Color. I don't have a lot of specific memories of it, but I do remember playing a lot of Pokemon Yellow.
I think I told this story on the show before, but I remember going to Best Buy with $100 or so in cash and buying my first Game Boy Pocket with cash at the Best Buy with my mom. Like, you know, she'd take me there and I was in, I don't know, probably middle school, maybe even late elementary school, but I had saved up all of my birthday money and all of my Christmas money or whatever. Like every time I could find a spare dollar, I saved it all up. And I remember I went and bought it in cash. And then I had the really cool, like clear one, you know, that was like clear plastic. And you could see the circuit board through it and all that. And it was just a Game Boy Pocket, so it was not color. And then I remember I was running down the street one time, and this was a little bit later, but like I was chasing after some friends.
No.
And the Game Boy flew out of my pocket and landed face down on the pavement and cracked the screen.
No.
And I was just distraught. And it was just heartbreaking.
Yeah, that's rough.
I did end up eventually, I forget if it was for Christmas or if I bought it myself, but I got a Game Boy Color in like the teal color, like the teal case of it. The Game Boy Color, and I played Pokemon Gold and a bunch of other. That was actually my first exposure to like RPG games, also with Zelda Link to the Past.
I never played Zelda.
Oh man, so good.
Yeah, never touched that one. I had a yellow Game Boy Color that had Pikachu on the front that came with Pokemon Yellow.
I remember that, yeah.
Which, you know, anytime I talk about it with someone that also had that one was just like, yes, I remember Pikachu on the front. And anyone that like never saw one was just like, that's weird. Why would you want that?
I had significant FOMO for that because I was an early adopter on the Game Boy Color and on Pokemon whatever. And so I didn't have I had already gotten those things, and so I didn't have an opportunity to get the Pikachu one because I already had mine, and why would I, you know, get one with this special coloring on it? So I would have been the kid that would have been jealous of you at the time.
You mean you're not going to buy the God of War 5 PS5 edition?
No, I'm going to keep the PS5 I have, thank you.
Funny how that still is relevant today.
Yes, it is. It really is. Man, we're talking about things, sorry, just side note, we're talking about things from 20 years ago.
Yeah. This is maybe longer.
Strange. Carry on, sorry.
Well, to bring it a little closer, like, I don't know, 2 years, I eventually transitioned from Game Boy to the Nintendo 64 was my first console. I know my dad had older consoles that he had kind of played, and he may have had one laying around, but I don't ever remember playing any console other than a Nintendo 64. And I played the heck out of Nintendo 64. I like any game that was popular on that, I probably had. I remember like just a row of cartridges, you know, sitting there. And I really, really enjoyed the N64. You know, Super Mario 64, Pokemon Snap was great. I loved Pokemon Snap. Smash Bros, Mario Party, Mario Kart, all of the, you know, the first party ones. Those are what come to mind, but I spent a lot of time on N64. I did eventually transition to a PS2, I think. I skipped the PlayStation 1 entirely. But around then is when I started to kind of get interested in PC gaming. And I remember like my first experience watching someone else play a PC game. And I remember the game that I first experienced on the PC is one I played for 8 years. I was invited over to a friend's house the week Star Wars Galaxies came out. My friend invited me over. He's like, hey, I'm playing this game. It's really fun. It's an online game. And I swear to you, at the time, I had no idea what Star Wars was. I just hadn't experienced it yet as a kid.
Wow.
And my parents knew of it, but they weren't like big fans like I am now. And I would say my Star Wars fandom started by experiencing Star Wars Galaxies.
That's crazy to me. That's nuts.
Yeah. I like for the first year, I was just like, what is Star Wars? I don't understand. Like, this is a game. It's just a game. And eventually I started to learn the lore and like started to become a little bit more interested in it.
And then someone told you that there were movies also?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't know exactly how that went down, but yes, that's essentially what happened.
By the way, there's movies for this video game that you're playing. They just happen to be like the most popular science fiction movies of all time.
I really got into the game before I even knew what Star Wars was.
That's crazy.
But so this friend showed me Star Wars Galaxies. I was like, I want this. I want this. I want this. I want to play this. This looks amazing. It was a very in-depth MMO. It was a great MMO. It's the best MMO I've ever played in my whole life. You know, it got ruined throughout the ages. We won't talk about this. Isn't a Star Wars Galaxy episode, but when I first started playing it, my PC wasn't good enough. I think it was still a family PC. I'm pretty sure it wasn't mine. I'm almost positive it wasn't mine. And we had to upgrade the RAM from 512 megabytes of RAM to 1 gigabyte so that I could play this game. That is kind of like the instance that I remember that most like prominently, in that opening up a PC, learning about like RAM a little bit. My dad helped a ton, right? Like I didn't really do a whole lot of it, but we had to like open it up. We had to find what kind of RAM. We had to buy it. I think we bought it online. I don't really remember. Like I didn't know you could do that. Maybe we went to Best Buy. I really don't remember. But I got into Star Wars Galaxies, and I played Star Wars Galaxies for 8 years. I had a $15 a month subscription for 8 years. And I had a very similar situation with my parents, like you did, where I had to do certain chores or I had to complete certain tasks for them to keep paying the $15 a month, right? I had, that was essentially a part of an allowance based on kind of stuff that I did. Mm-hmm. But that was like the intro. And I would say probably, I don't have the years exactly right, but once I was into Star Wars Galaxies and I had a PC that I used regularly, my next big purchase, actually my first purchase on Steam, was the Orange Box.
Me too. Yep.
And that was me starting my Steam account, which I have a relatively old Steam account. So that was kind of the start of it. I put thousands of hours. I would say like for a teenager, I put a stupid amount of hours into Star Wars Galaxies. Nowadays, I watch a streamer. He's got like 5,000 hours in Guild Wars 2, but he streams it every day. It's his job. Over the 8 years, I think I had close to about 7,000 hours in Star Wars Galaxies.
Wow. Between
the two accounts I had. It was pretty crazy. I loved that game. That game was great. But let's get to the point. The reason I enjoyed it so much is because when I got into it, within, 2 months, 3 months, I was involved in guilds. I was involved in communities. I was all about like gathering a group of people to go do something. I was always kind of like, as like a 14-year-old, I was like, I wouldn't call it raid leading, but I would call it dungeon leading, right? It was not as high pressure as a raid, but it was, and it didn't require like voice chat, but I was gathering a group of people in a city to say, hey, you want to earn some experience or loot. Let's, I'm gathering a group of 10 people to go to, for those of you that played Star Wars Galaxies, I was gathering in Anchorhead to take a group of people to the Tusken Raider camp in the northwest corner of Tatooine, which means you had to fly from Anchorhead to Mos Espa and then walk 4,000 meters to the Tusken Raider camp because there were no mounts yet.
I take it that was difficult.
It was just a long journey. And like, so you had to gather a group of people. And back then the Tusken Raider camp was like an actual like you had to stay together as a group. It was so much fun. It was so much fun, Chris. And it was all about playing with other people. I quickly got involved in like a guild. And that was my first experience with Ventrilo, which just like the predecessor to everything else. It was a lot of fun, and that is what started my PC career. But that today is why I still say I play games to play with other people, because my entire PC experience is built on this foundation of playing MMOs with other people.
Well, on our last show, you said that you really got your start with FPSs. Like, where does that come into play? Because Star Wars Galaxies was not a first-person shooter, from my recollection.
No, it wasn't. So MMOs come and go for me. Games come and go for me. That's always been true. So I would say I played Star Wars Galaxies like that, like hardcore, see the sun come up kind of, unhealthy amount. For, I don't know, 4 years, 5 years, I would say. But past that, I started to stop playing as heavily. They made some change. I alluded to it. They made some changes that changed the game, particularly for veterans. They started going after new players a little bit. We don't have to get into it, but eventually the game started to not be what I wanted anymore. And then obviously after playing a game that much for 5 years, you're just kind of like, okay, I've kind of done almost everything there is to do, or at least everything I care about. And the group that I played with started to not play as much either. So it was like kind of this prime searching for something new thing. And all the rage at the time were the Call of Duties and the Battlefields and stuff. So I kind of went that direction just out of interest, and I found another community. Right. So I would say a couple years after Star Wars Galaxies, my original community kind of died off, and I found another community that played all these games on PC. And every time a new game come out, everyone would buy it together, and we would all play the new game, and you would have a team to play on. And again, it all centered around finding this community that played a game. Now, would I say that FPSs were like my favorite? No, but every time I logged on, there was a group of people saying, hey, come play with us, come join our team. And that was really all I was looking for. So again, I wasn't very good. I wouldn't say I was bad, but I wasn't very good. But it was fun to play with other people. I play games to play with other people. Are you sensing a theme?
A little bit.
Trying to lay it on pretty thick.
So how did we get from kind of, we both like to do these games, into, hey, we're here talking to you on a podcast right now about games?
Wow, that's a good question. That's like 10 more years to fill in the gap of.
Well, we don't have to go through every year by year. We could skip a few.
So in 2004, no, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, you and I are friends. We both have an interest in gaming. How would you say that we ended up here?
I think where this all started was we just had a lot of conversations, and we both like to listen to podcasts, and we said, man, we should totally do a podcast, as we've quoted ourselves in the past.
I think episode 1's title is We Should Totally Do a Podcast.
I think it might be. That's a good throwback there. And so from there, we basically decided that we were going to do it.
As I said kind of at the top of the show, Chris and I do this show for us and for each other, to have fun, to have conversation. But the reason we record and publish is to kind of have an audience, right? To share our ideas and our thoughts with other people. So we do want to thank all of you that have been listening, particularly those that have been listening from the beginning. That's amazing. That's awesome. But even to new listeners, the show is growing, slowly, but growing nonetheless. And, we're thankful for each one of you that downloads and listens every episode.
If you want to give us any of your thoughts on maybe how you got started with gaming, or, maybe what you think of our origin stories here, you can visit us at pnapodcast.com. That's P, the letter N, the letter A, podcast.com, and find us on our Discord at discord.pnapodcast.com.
We're recording and publishing an episode of P&A every other week, and we are up to 50 episodes, and I think we have at least 50 more to go. If you're enjoying this podcast, we'd really like to grow it. So all we ask is that you share the show with others that may enjoy it.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll talk to you next time.